In 1964, a Volkswagen van bearing Swiss plates parked on a narrow street in a little village in the northeastern mountains of Lebanon. It was packed with young Western missionaries. They were going door to door sharing the gospel when they met a 14-year-old boy who, as it turned out, was already a new believer and was passionate about his faith. This boy's name was George Houssney. He soon joined them, translating and helping wherever he could. But George was still struggling with a hatred for Muslims. One day, when the team was heading into a Muslim area to preach, George refused to go. The young Swiss team leader, Ulrich Bruderer, asked him, "Why not? Didn't Jesus die for Muslims too?" That question shook George's worldview and changed him forever. In the years that followed, George dove headfirst into evangelism and began gaining experience in discipling those who accepted Christ. As a teenager, he was heavily involved in establishing and even leading several churches in North Lebanon, many of which are still there today. He was greatly encouraged by a missionary named Mabel Summers, who would drive him from church to church on Sunday mornings to lead the services at each village. When he went to university in Beirut, he became involved in every student ministry he could find and began taking mission trips around the Middle East and Europe, to England, France, Mauritania, and Yemen. He was part of a small community of believers in Beirut reaching out to international students on his campus and served alongside a young missionary woman named Janelle Reichert, who went by Joy and whom he later married. For 12 years, George directed the translation of the Book of Life, the Kitab al-Hayat Arabic Bible, which was translated in Beirut, Lebanon, and printed in Cairo, Egypt. This work took him to every country in the Arab world, from North Africa to the Arabian Peninsula, where he did linguistic research and also gained a huge vision for ministry globally. He and Joy went through many threatening and difficult experiences in the process of this translation project, but in the end, the Lord used him to create a well-known and well-respected Bible translation, of which over 25 million copies have been distributed. This Bible was a groundbreaking project that gave millions of Muslims access to the scriptures in a language they could easily understand, modern Standard Arabic. In 1982, George was anxious to engage in more direct personal evangelism and began work among the international student population at the University of Colorado in Boulder, with a focus on reaching Muslims. George led many international students to Christ and trained dozens of them in Christian leadership in order to send them back to their nations as missionaries. He also involved dozens of local churches in the work of reaching out to international students and trained them in how to effectively reach them. He also planted an Arabic-speaking church in Denver, which flourished in the late 1980s and hosted national Arab Christian conferences. Yet George's desire for reaching the world for Christ was still not satisfied. His vision was much, much bigger, and he began dreaming of a way to bring together all that God had taught him through a decade of church planting and student ministry in Lebanon, over a decade of Bible translation, and nearly a decade of international student ministry in Boulder. That is why he founded Horizons International, in order to advance the massive vision that God had developed within him. That vision is rooted in radical faith and bold proclamation and witness, is based on mobilizing and equipping the national church around the world for the work of the harvest, and it believes that Christians in every location must have a vision and take action locally, nationally, and globally. George also dreamed of being part of an organization that functioned more like an organism, a dynamic group of diverse, like-minded believers working together to fulfill the Great Commission. That is Horizons International.